Dave Bautista and Milla Jovovich's new action fantasy movie In the Lost Lands will hit theaters this week, and could be a surprise hit if reviews are positive. Adapted from a short story by Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin, In the Lost Lands follows a powerful witch and fierce hunter as they make their way across a nightmarish post-apocalyptic hellscape, facing down dangerous enemies and fearsome creatures the entire way. The R-rated action movie will feature plenty of gunslinging violence that gives it the spirit of a western in addition to a fantasy adventure. Dune 2 star Dave Bautista has quickly become one of the most in-demand actors in Hollywood after a string of recent successes in massive franchises, while Jovovich has made a career in action, horror, and sci-fi films, most notably the Resident Evil franchise. In the Lost Lands is directed by Jovovich's husband, noted action director Paul W. S. Anderson, Mortal Kombat, Event Horizon, and is adapted from the short story of the same name that was part of the 1982 fantasy anthology Amazons 2. The story predates Martin's release of the original Game of Thrones novel by nearly 10 years, although it was originally slated to release a week earlier on February 28, 2025, the release of In the Lost Lands was delayed until March 7, 2025. The decent budget, $55+ million, name recognition of its 2 stars, and status as an adaptation of a George R.R. Martin story could lead to box office success for In the Lost Lands, especially if word of mouth is positive. It will face an uphill battle though, as its new release date puts it head-to-head with Bong Joon-ho's highly anticipated sci-fi movie Mickey 17 starring Robert Pattinson. When will In the Lost Lands release on streaming? Its distributor may point to the date and platform. Although no official streaming date has been announced, the past release patterns for other movies from In the Lost Lands distributor, Vertical Entertainment, could point to when audiences can expect the fantasy action movie to arrive on streaming platforms. Vertical's recent horror mystery The Damned, which released to excellent reviews, released in theaters on January 3, and was available for streaming on January 21, just under 3 weeks after its theatrical debut. A similar cadence would put In the Lost Lands on streaming platforms in mid to late March 2025. When will In the Lost Lands release on digital? The window between theatrical release and VOD continues to shrink. Dave Bautista and Milla Jovovich in the Lost Lands. Again, looking at the history of Vertical Entertainment's distributed films, the VOD and streaming release dates are typically very similar. Particularly for movies that aren't blockbusters and likely won't have earned repeat theater visits, the window between theatrical releases and VOD releases is shrinking. Most minor movies like In the Lost Lands are available within 2 to 3 weeks, and it certainly seems as though it will follow that pattern. Given its distributor, it seems likely the film will arrive on Amazon Prime first, although Netflix is also a candidate.